All right, good morning and welcome from wherever you have joined us from. I am James Lubo. My academic background is in quantitative economics from Makerere University, and I am part of the organizing team for this event, which has been organized by Open Economics Uganda, a youth-led organization that is striving to promote relevant economics education in Uganda through rethinking economics. And today's topic of discussion is titled, Who is an Economist? The Role of Uganda's Academia in Preparing Relevant Economists to Solve Uganda's Development Needs. A special thanks goes out to our partners and sponsors who have made this event possible. And those are Exploring Economics, Protestant Academy of Thuringia, and the Ball Foundation. And I'm also happy to introduce a very capable and well-versed panel that has wealth of knowledge, experience, and expertise that I'm sure we shall all learn from, and hopefully it will be an insightful discussion at the end of the day. So I'm going to introduce the panelists in a bit, and then after that, we shall begin the discussion. So one of the panelists is Dr. Fred Mahomza, who is a lecturer at Makerere University. And he also has parallel teaching careers at Nkumba University and African Bible University. He has over 20 years of experience in development policy, research, and analysis. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Fred Mahomza.
Thank you, James. Good morning, everybody, or good evening, or wherever you are across the planet. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Also on our panel, we have Mr. Wilson Asimwe, who is a senior economist at the Ministry of Finance, Planning, and Economic Development. He is a senior economic modeler at the ministry in the Macroeconomic Policy Department. Wilson is also a research fellow at the Macroeconomic and Financial Management Institute for Eastern and Southern Africa, where he tutors short-term courses in macroeconomic modeling and forecasting. It's a pleasure to have you, Mr. Wilson Asiimwe.
Thank you, James. It's a pleasure to participate in this dialogue. I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
All right, just a brief guideline for our audience. Please make sure your microphone is muted, turn off your video when the panelists are sharing, and you will have an opportunity at the end of the discussion to ask your questions. So you can note them down in the chat, we shall monitor them. And for those who submitted your questions prior to the event, we shall make it a point to share those with the panelists. All right, I'm looking forward to an insightful discussion, and hopefully I will be able to tap from your wealth of knowledge and experience, Wilson and Fred. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Wilson Asimwe, if you could, with the first question. And this is drawn from our title for the event, Who is an Economist? So, Mr. Wilson, from your perspective, from your point of view, how would you define an economist and what is expected of an economics graduate?
Thank you, James. I'll begin with what do economists do. If you want to know who's an economist, we need to learn from the historical economists and what they have contributed to the economies and the general global economy. I have some guiding talking notes in the slides, which I'm going to share. Maybe we could follow that. Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, please.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Once again, I'm Wilson Asimwe. I'm the Minister of Finance in the Macroeconomic Policy Department. The question, who is an economist? And specifically looking at what do economists do and what is expected from graduates from university in the marketplace. Let us look at what have economists done all over the world. Economists in Uganda, economists in Malawi, economists in Norway, in the US, or elsewhere, Japan, elsewhere. Let's begin with the founding fathers of economics and what they have done. One of the founding fathers is Adam Smith. And what did he contribute? What did he do? We shall see a certain character that these economists have over time. Adam Smith came up and with his theory of an invisible hand, saying that government should not interfere in the market, that individuals are rational and they can make rational decisions, and competition is enough in self-regulating and leading to optimal decisions which are efficient, and government involvement will be distortion. That was his contribution. And we can see the traits of his contributions even in the current way how we manage economies, and even both at macro and at micro. Then some other economists called Thomas Malthus also came with theory that predicted that growing populations would outstrip food supply. And many economists have tried to test this to find its validity, and it has been standing up to now. But however, some economists proved him wrong and criticized him that he didn't foresee technological innovations that would allow production to keep pace with the growing population. But with time, we see that a number of economists have transformed his theory largely to link it or focus on scarcity of things rather than the demand for them. And a number of economists have come up with different theories. Let's look at Keynes, John Maynard Keynes, and what he contributed. For him, he says that if an economy's investment exceeds saving, it will cause inflation. And if an economy's saving is higher than its investment, it will cause recession. And based on this, he proposed that when there is a recession and the government increases spending, that will help to the problem of unemployment, and it will cause economic recovery. And we have a number of economists even to date who follow Keynes, and they are now generally called Keynesian economists. And some of them came up, some Keynesian economists came up and also added to his theory, and so actually demand drives production, not supply. What do we learn from this? We see that economics, it's a body of knowledge which is always under construction, and different economists have built on it. Even in this corona season, COVID season over the world, we have seen different economic theories coming up, as I will show you later. But someone else called Jean-Baptiste Say came up also criticizing this in the Keynesian economists, saying that supply creates its own demand, and it's properly known as Say's law. And he insists that changes in aggregate demand have no effect on real gross production or employment, it only affects price level. But a number of economists also have come to criticize this, and others are building on it. What we learn from this? That economists will have to keep on building on it, depending on the challenge at hand. Now, proceeding, now leaving the theoretical part of it, we come to the modeling part of it. Some other economists like Leontief came up with practical tools or practical frameworks, how to analyze economies. He built the first input-output table and introduced input-output analysis. And with this, he won a Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics of Science in 1973. His contribution, he continued, but other economists came up and built on his innovation. We see Sir Richard Stone continue with the Leontief's approach and built the first sum, that's the social accounting matrix, in 1962. And following the steps of Sir Richard Stone, we see Piat and Eric Tobeck continued and popularizing the use of social accounting matrices. And it has been developing. You can see economics is a knowledge which keeps on developing. Someone else called Wallace came up with the Wallace law. And this says that if there are any markets and n minus one of these are in equilibrium, then the last market is also in equilibrium. And this has been a foundation of the models we use to date. The CGE models, the DSGE models are based on this law, that if any markets are in equilibrium, then the last market, the final market, which is the nth market, is also in equilibrium. And without this theory, it would be hard for most of the models to be built in the current age. So you can see that an economist finds a problem and proposes a solution, and other economists build on that solution to expound it, to be used, to be made practical. Now, also, I know students at the university, you have seen, you have heard about the Lewis's model, who focused largely on a dual sector model, economy of two sectors, where the agricultural sector, which is the subsistence sector, has a lot of labor, and the urban sector or the industrial sector has capitalists and less labor. And people move from rural areas to go and look for jobs in urban areas in the industrial sector, which we see in most of the developing economies. And many economies are built on this, to build models which can handle, which can propose options for growth based on the dynamics of the labor markets. Now, lastly, we see the recent economists like Joseph Stiglitz. He also saw a number of problems, and proposed solutions. For instance, his theory on the public finance, where he stated that an optimal supply of local public goods can be funded entirely through capture of land rents generated by those goods. For him, he believed that when government puts up an infrastructure or a public good, there's competition, and this infrastructure is geographical. And when people compete for that infrastructure, the price of land in that area increases, and the government should be able to tax that value, additional value. And because of that, he got a Nobel Prize. And he also added in the body of knowledge how incomplete information prevents markets from achieving social efficiency. And a number of tools and a number of papers, a number of policy options have been developed using these theories. Now, leaving the global economy, we come to Uganda. How have the economists in Uganda contributed in terms of building the knowledge of economists or defining what an economist is? Let's look at our governor, Bank of Uganda, and where he began from. We see our governor, Bank of Uganda, Professor Emmanuel Tebile, spearheaded the design and implementation of the economic reforms in Uganda. And this restored Uganda from economic crises of the 1970s and 1980s to a sound economic performance during his service as a permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance. And we saw with this intervention, his intervention, we saw inflation moving from 200% to single-digit inflation, which we have now. And we saw GDP moving from negatives to positive, and some years double-digit. And also reserves moving from nothing, now raising up to 5.2 months of imports of goods and services. Lending rates moving from 40% to below 20%. Exchange rates were liberalized and now following the market forces. And the economy now is stable and moving very well, largely because of the contribution and the ideas which he spearheaded this economy, and we can see the fruits. And with this discussion, the economists globally, historical ones and the current ones, what traits do we find with them? And it's those traits that help us to define who is an economist. We see an economic problem which emerges. Then we see an economist who also emerges with analysis to propose a solution. Then they bring up a solution which helps the society to come out of that problem. And now the question, who is an economist with this? From this, we see that an economist is a person who really works on handling scarce resources, allocating scarce resources with constraints. Yeah, an economist, a person who studies the behavior of a society and be able to collect data and use that data to do analysis, build tools and conduct analysis to be able to replicate the decisions of the society. And if he is able to do that, that means he can easily predict the decisions of the society. And if he can predict the decisions of the society, we can use that analysis he has to make policy options, so that government can use these policy options to direct the economy or the decisions of individuals to the desired outcome. For instance, like reducing poverty, increasing productivity, increasing savings. So an economist is the person who stands in between and helps in that. However, we have different types of economists. We have macroeconomists, microeconomists, public finance economists, labor economists, international economists, finance economists, econometricians, environment economists, health economists, and many more. But now, what do these all do? Yeah, let's use an example of macroeconomists. Yeah, I use an analogy of a bird in hand. When you are an economist, you are left to university and you come to, let's say, to the Ministry of Finance or to the central bank. What's your role and what defines you? You'll be like someone holding a bird in your hand. This bird, if you overhold it and you squeeze it, it will die. But if you don't hold it enough and you become loose, it will fly away. That's how the economy is. Yeah, you hold it, let's say to fly away, like what we saw happen in Zimbabwe a number of years. And if you over squeeze it, it will die. That means poverty will increase and the resource allocation will be affected. And thus, this means we need optimization. And how do you optimize? Economists optimize, they need tools. That means economists need to make their hands dirty, get data, get tools, analyze, provide the policy options and guide policy. And with that, that's what we call, we define that as modeling. Now, the other question which comes up, what do economists do? Yeah, after defining what is an economist, we can see what an economist do. Largely, once you become an economist and in the field and get a job as an economist, largely, let's say it's in government or any other institution, largely you'll be researching, making research. For instance, to give an example, when COVID hit this economy, we are tasked by policymakers to do an analysis of the likely impact. And a paper was drafted, which is now published with IGC on estimating income losses and consequences of COVID-19 crisis in Uganda. Now, if you want to know what economists do, you have to be able to read what earlier economists have done. I would encourage all students to download this paper and read it and see the timing, how it came out. Economists collect data and also build databases. And economists, you cannot do an analysis without data. Yeah. First of all, you collect secondary data, then the micro in case secondary is not there. For instance, the Uganda national household surveys are compiling macroeconomic databases, building social accounting matrices, which you can use to do analysis and inform policy. Then economists also present results. Once you do analysis, you present results. For instance, policy briefs. After doing your results, you pick out policy briefs in a language that your policymakers will understand, and then you present. And then you impact the decision of government to be able to allocate resources efficiently and optimally so that you can achieve the intended objectives and outcomes. And also economists interpret results and also forecasts markets and macro trends. For instance, you are all aware, last year, we published the third National Development Plan. Yeah, economists, we had to develop the macroeconomic framework. And develop this, use tools, collect data, existing data, and use that data. That data within it has a behavior of the society, behavior of the economy, and use that behavior, which is in the data, to predict the behavior of the individuals, of the economy, maybe 5 years ahead. And then use that to do policy options to direct the economy where you want. That's what economists do. And economists advise businesses, governments, individuals, and depending where you get a job. Then economists make recommendations to economic problems. Like now we have a big problem which is global and also local. Global is COVID-19, but local we had to lock down. And that becomes a local problem, which has many faces, health faces, economic faces, social faces, political faces. But economists have to come up with the tools and very fast and analyze and provide policy options which government can follow and safeguard the economy. With that, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson Asimwe, for a comprehensive definition of who an economist is and what an economist is supposed to do and what he or she is expected to do while in the field. So I'll move on to Dr. Fred. Moving on to, based on the submission from Mr. Wilson, is the current academic system at university churning out economists who are able and capable to do the analysis that Mr. Wilson has talked about, or based on your experience and your work with the students, do you see a need for a change or something that needs to be done to better empower the students to be able to be ready for the job market?
Thank you, James. And once again, good morning, everybody. I will take a brief, maybe 5 minutes or 8, possibly less, to just share on the question you have raised. First of all, I think, Wilson, thank you so much for those insightful kind of messages which speak to the different realms that the economists can participate on. Some of the things Wilson raises can only be done by an economist after they have done their masters. So as we say, what can an economist do? You want to profile who exactly is an economist, and at what point should an economist engage the different aspects of economics. There are those people who will have finished economics with A level. They have learned quite a lot of theories. Some would trade as economists in their own right. I have seen some other people who have come to university and have done economics, possibly in the first year, micro, macro, and ended there. Are they economists? Are they not? The people who have done economics in education or have done economics as journalists, or economics as statisticians. So different people will find that the economics they learned at university fit certain levels of the requirements and engagements in a field space. But that also speaks to the opportunities available for economists across the globe. They are not all going to be like we grew up thinking economists must work in the Ministry of Planning or Finance or the central bank. We have now non-economists can also work in national water. Economists can work in the military. Economists can work anywhere, because what is economics literally? It is managing scarcity, making those choices. And that's why I'm saying the theory that is being taught and the tools that are being taught to economists are still relevant, because these are the basics for any application of economics. It doesn't matter at what level you are going to, you'll still try to be addressing the basic economic questions of what, when, for whom, and how. You'll still be saying in the absence of plenty, you have scarcity. You have to go through opportunity cost. You're basically going to be making choices. And as you make choices, you have opportunity cost. You're taking a decision here, you're taking a decision there. But what choices and what should inform those choices is basically the economics. I can speak to a few things here. If I'm saying for whom do we produce what product, you are really speaking to allocation. You have limited resources. This is what you do when you're managing a government budget. Every sector is quarreling. Agriculture should be given 10%. Health says you should be given 15%, education 15%. Then some people will be coming and saying you haven't addressed maternal care, you haven't, all these are really squabbling over scarce resources. And the economists must deploy those tools they learned, which may involve costs and benefits. What is the cost if I give this money to Ministry of Health? And what is the benefit? What if the resource is limited and there is a riot, the country is being overrun? Should I continue and put this resource in Ministry of Health and let war come and kill everybody? Or should I first prioritize the military and say let there be peace? Then we can treat the sick. In the process, some people are going to die. Either way, people are going to die because of either disease or the enemy that is invading the country. Now, the choices there is what economists are basically trained. One good example that is current and very much in our midst is the COVID pandemic. COVID comes up and there have been all these debates. Why have we closed schools? When are we opening schools? But we are trading between life and education. Which one is more important? So the message was very clear. Everybody in school go home. As we watch the situation, you've come back possibly 6 months late, a year late, some haven't gone back. But at least we're talking about people who are alive. We're not talking about people who are dead here. So economists must inform those decisions to say, well, when I look at the costs, and the cost is death, and I look at the cost is also forfeiting education for 1 year, but I look at the benefit that these people will be alive, the benefit outweighs the costs, and the decision is made. So economics is spread out everywhere. We have a question of when. When do you deliver what? Vaccinations, we all know, are not treatment. But for diseases that must be vaccinated, you cannot treat them once they have come. Most viruses, you have viruses, say in poultry, you must vaccinate. You cannot begin to treat when your poultry has already been attacked by the disease that you ought to have immunized. So economics is saying, when do you do that? Please do it before the disease comes, because this disease can only be managed through immunization and not treatment. So economics is across all the spheres of life. And I want to believe that the tools and the teaching still being given, at least for basic fundamentals of economic theory and concepts and analytical tools, is still relevant. Where we possibly still need improvements is to say, how do we help students of economics and graduates of economics to identify the problems in their midst? As you said, it's about problem identification, which part of economic theory that will be relevant and which tools of economics will be relevant to resolve those challenges. So quite often our teaching ends with pumping people with the basic economic theories, tools, concepts, and all sorts of things. But we do not teach that transitioning on when you are an economist in the Ministry of Health, what is supposed to be your responsibility. Should we be doing a theater operations at Health Center 3? Certainly not, because you do not have enough doctors there. You're talking about scarcity. But also you do not have very many people who need operations at that level. The theater will spend a month without any case coming up. So why don't you use a referral system so that everybody who needs an operation is referred to Health Center 4. If it's complex, regional referral, too complex, Mlago, which is a national referral. So those things are following economic principles to say, do not do a heavy investment where the need is actually limited. That's basic economics, and I think that's where we need to improve. I will just end with one interesting thing. Uganda is going to launch a satellite. I'm wondering whether the economists in this discussion know the role of an economist in that business. Is there economics, or do you think it is just scientists and engineers who work out the parabolas and hyperbolas and launch the satellite and hold it in space? There is certainly a lot of economics there, and I'll wait to hear reactions from the audience on this. Thank you, James, and the rest of the colleagues.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fred. And I'm not sure if I have the answer to your question of whether economists are actually involved in that process of launching the satellite, but my bet is that they are far from it. Anyway, I'll wait to hear as well from the comments and some of the questions that will come in from our audience. So thank you so much for comprehensively describing who an economist is, what is expected of an economist from both a micro and macro perspective. And thank you so much, Mr. Wilson Asimwe, for doing justice to the economic theory, the development of economic theory, mostly from a neoclassical perspective and also a bit of Keynesian perspective. Now, given what the institutions are supposed to do, and this is building on from your submission, Dr. Fred, you mentioned that the current academic system is doing the basic and preparing economists with the basic theory. However, there is need for that transition into the marketplace. And I would actually want to know, what role do students have? Is it always supposed to be the university to impart some of these technical skills, or students need to take the initiative to learn some of the skills that are relevant? And This question will go to you, Mr. Wilson Asimwe. And if you're able to, in 5 or so minutes, give us how students can actually prepare themselves for the workplace outside the theoretical classes at university. Thank you.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Dr. Fred, for the detailed submission. How are students prepared? How can they prepare themselves for work as an economist in the field? And also subsequent question on how can the teaching be improved to make sure that the students are ready for the field. I'll begin with the teaching with the university side, then I'll come to the students. The university is really doing good and doing well, especially all of us who are at university and we learned a lot of theory and also some practice. And we came at the job, we are teachable when we reach in the job. But still, there's always room of improvement. Always there's room for improvement. What I would propose, room of improvement maybe at the university, is largely emphasize more practical, add more practical. We do more theory and practical is less, maybe we have more practical. And this could be through maybe emphasizing internships, have some internships which are beyond once. For instance, internship could begin in the first year, so that students could know which areas to focus on. And also, the curriculum could have some hands-on training. For instance, there are a number of fields of economics. There's environment economics, macroeconomics, microeconomics, health economics. Yeah, a number of fields of economics. So students cannot learn all models which belong to these fields of economics. So there is need of specialization somewhere. Maybe by second year, students could specialize. A student could choose to become a macroeconomist or a microeconomist or an environmental economist or a health economist or any other form of economist. But in the area of specialization, the student should be able also to learn at least a tool, at least one model or one tool. At undergraduate, it can be a simple tool. At master's, could be more advanced. At PhD, be a bigger tool. At least learn something, with some skills. Make your hands dirty before you come to the field. Then also institutions could also encourage student dialogues. For instance, now we have a number of economic challenges. Like now COVID-19, it's an economic challenge. You have debt issues, you have financial crises, which always hit once and in a while. And we also have poverty problems, especially in developing countries. Students could be encouraged to have dialogues, let's say seminars, where students could be grouped into smaller groups, and they use data to do some analysis and present and compete for a prize being given by a faculty or by a university at administrative level. And this would encourage critical thinking and also would encourage putting what you learn in class to practice. And in such discussions, policymakers from government could be invited. You come and listen in. And with that, you'll be surprised that students will feed into policy directly from their research. Yeah, so that could be taken up. And also within the university, institutions could, let's say departments and maybe schools could work together on given problems. For instance, shocks don't always have one face. Shocks like COVID-19, it has an economic face, it has a health face, it has a social face, a psychological face, a number of faces. And these faces all belong to different schools at the university or different departments. And these departments could be organized by the university at the administrative level to have different analyses or papers developed. The medical school does a paper on the impact of COVID-19. The social science does a paper, economics does a paper, and others do a paper. Then these come and present in one, let's say, conference, and they could be rewarded, and policymakers will come and listen. Now, when these papers are put together, we come up with one paper which tackles all areas of the economy. and that could guide policy. Yeah, this could be taken up, and it's the universal administration which can institutionalize such initiative. Then also IT skills. University, you find that students come from different schools. Some schools, maybe let's say a school in rural areas where there's no electricity. Some students come from Kampala where there's electricity and internet, and they all end up in the same class at the university, and they're at different level of IT. So there should be a framework how to bring all these students to the same table, to the same level, training them, and they should be able, at least by the time they graduate, to have the similar skills in terms of IT which is relevant to the field of economics. For instance, like minor analysis, as an undergraduate, you should be able to use Excel. At least use an Excel to do some analysis. You should be able to get a series of numbers, divide them by a given scalar, some literacy in terms of IT skills. And this mantle is not only on the university. Now I go back to the students. What are your roles as a student to be able to build this capacity? Students, you should know that once you become an economist, you should read widely to know what other economists are doing. That's the only way you can learn. Put yourself, personal effort to know the current economic affairs in your country and also the global economy. Read newspapers, read policy briefs. Like the Ministry of Finance, even the Central Bank and other institutions, we publish monthly performance of the economy reports, quarterly performance of the economy reports, biannual performance of the economy performance reports, even annual reports. Read these reports and see how economists are writing and try to understand what they are doing, and you learn from those. And also, students need to take personal initiative to know what's happening elsewhere. Yeah, you should by now you should be knowing what the impact of COVID to USA, impact of COVID to China, impact of COVID to Kenya, and then you can know the impact, be able to assess impact of COVID to Uganda. And then the other one, students should learn that you don't, at university, they'll just kickstart you to be able to move. Once you have started, move on your own, take off. You don't need to know everything. Everything is on internet. Take advantage of free courses. They are free analytical courses. Like if you go to a website called edx.org, it has a number of courses. You can learn Excel by your own. You can learn how to do some financial analysis, some financial modeling, some economic modeling on your own at free cost. And it's open to everyone. And they're being taught by professors. You are being taught by people who have applied, who have been in academia for long, who have been in practice for long. So take advantage of such things. And also be able to replicate. If you cannot do an analysis on your own, get a paper at least somewhere where someone has done a paper maybe for Kenya, or a paper in Nigeria, or a paper in the US. Just borrow the methodology, change the data set, and you'll be able to do it for Uganda. I'll give an example, like personally. I've never gone to school to learn how to decompose the multipliers of the social account matrices. But I downloaded a paper by Piat and Drown, 2006. And this paper, they are able to decompose multipliers into open loop effects, closed loop effects, and transfer effects using the matrices which are M1, M2, M3. And I was able to do it. Now I'm an expert in decomposing multipliers. But you can do it at free cost. You get to learn from literature which has been done. Yeah. And then lastly, what a student can do, be good to yourself. Buy yourself a laptop, get a computer, and be able to use this computer to do analysis. Because once you get your own computer, you have free time, you have enough time to do some simple analysis. You can install Starter, some economic software like Starter, eViews, GamePack, MATLAB. They are all downloadable. And all these softwares have a demonstration license, which can run simple models. Not advanced models, but simple models for learning, you can run them. Some of the things you can learn them by yourself. So with those, I think if you do those, I think the sky is the limit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very comprehensive response. And a couple of things that I can pick from your submission is the importance of interdisciplinarity and pluralism in the way economics is taught. Economics should not be taught in isolation to itself. It should be taught with regards to the other aspects of society, sociology, and the like, medicine, just like you hinted on, the impact of coronavirus has shown that a health crisis can easily turn into an economic crisis. So there's need for economists to have multidisciplinary competence. So, and thank you also very much for adding on the technical competencies that are necessary for students to excel in the workplace. And these are not taught in class. So I hope the students and graduates that are on the call can take this up. Make sure you learn the technical skills that have been recommended, and there are many websites and resources. And Open Economics Uganda is actually taking up this initiative to create a network of young economists who are there to support each other in terms of career and excellence in academics. So I'll move on to Dr. Fred Mahomza, especially on the point of pluralism in economics. If you could build on that point, how best can this be attained? How best can the universities and the students pursue economics in the context of the broader society? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, James and colleagues. I think Wilson has quite highlighted a number of things that even before you venture out as an economist, you need to get out with a lot of confidence. We do not deploy soldiers who have spent a month in training unless there is really a crisis of war and your soldiers have been killed or the enemy has overwhelmed you. So how prepared are you as an economist to launch yourself out into that plural space? Because you are going to get out there and you'll find all the people who are arguing. Parliament has no specific profession, leave alone the higher levels of qualification. But these are the people who make our decisions. So you're not going to give them a model or a result of that model and you say, but you see the danger of doing this. No, they will be telling you, you launch the satellite tomorrow and then deal with COVID and then take our children back to school and then put ICUs in hospitals. We also have poor people. We need our roads repaired. The bridge the other day, we need electricity. They will throw the entire world at you. Now, how able are you to engage that chaotic? Because we live in a global environment which is pluralistic, which everybody, but as we've said, economists must be speaking to that environment. So communication is very, very critical. And I want to encourage those who can, please always endeavor to read The Economist. It's an expensive paper, but because it lasts, you can always find an older version. Even if it is 2-3 years, find and read it. Why are you recommending The Economist? The Economist is not actually written by economists. It's written by media people. There are few chapters or sections that are written by economists, but they write in a way that the world can, they break down economics for the world to read, because the world has illiterate people, soldiers, teachers, lawyers, doctors, all sorts of people, but who are part and parcel of the economic situation. So how do you break down the economy for them? And that's why many of them would sleep when the minister is reading a budget speech. He's talking of GDP, depreciation, appreciation. You see now there was this. You're not speaking to them, production, productivity, we're increasing this, enhancement of what? You're not speaking to your population. So we need to learn as economists to make communication. We need to read widely things of political economy. These days I spend more of my time in the political economy space because I believe that's why the economics is being really affected negatively, the decisions being made, and the political economy is about the people with power, the people without power, the people with interest, and the people without interest. Quite often you have people with power, they have no interest in development. Then you have a problem. Now you're like, do I take away their power? Or do I go and interest them in matters of development? Since they have the power and you can't take it away. Those are decisions we have to take. So you have to understand those broad systems on how the economics can be sold out. How do we make this even more relevant in the teaching? I think the teaching needs to look beyond. One is we may not just blame the students because sometimes they are real at their beginning levels and a lot of things need to be brought to them. Can we invite guest lecturers to come and speak to them? Wilson has rightfully said, you read, because some of the people may not come to you, but when some professionals have written, professionals, not just academicians, but there are people who are academicians, they have been in the professional practice and they have written some things. If a governor of a central bank has written something, if a researcher who is actively engaged with the United Nations has written something, I don't know how many of us are reading those reports from the World Bank, from the African Union Economic Commission for Africa, from the IMF, from Asia Development Bank, plus so many others. These are people who have engaged in practice. Some of them have been the current Chancellor of Makerere University, Professor Suruma. When he writes, he's writing both as an academic, but also as a practitioner. He's been a Minister of Finance, he's been a Director of Research at the Central Bank, he's been a Chair and Managing Director of a commercial bank. So when he writes, really blending the practice and also the academia. So you need to have that. The other alternative is universities can bring lecturers, people who may not necessarily be academicians, but they're out there in the practice. The permanent secretary can come and speak some quite wisdom to our students, but also to encourage the lecturers themselves to engage in direct research so that whatever they are teaching will be a little bit not just theory, but a blend of theory and the practice. So I think this would help us and students, and even us as economists, we need to read. I continue to read because you cannot end, and economics keeps changing. We're now having the economics that is trying to address COVID issues. The latest figures I'm seeing, our economy is going, if not already, into a recession. Now, do you still need a budget and a national development plan you made when the economy was growing at 6%? Wilson's models will tell you sometimes, as Chinese put it, you can no longer model. The uncertainty is just too much that a model will only give you that far. Now, how do you deal with uncertainty? You're going into game theory. You're literally going into all sorts of different pieces of economics, because for me, the challenge I have my colleagues that we engage with in government, we can no longer pursue the national development plan that was designed before COVID. We have to think of another two-pager of how do we get the economy back into space. But that's the political economy space. That is understanding and reading what are other countries doing. They're pumping out their COVID packages to revive their economies, but these are not the same economies. You can't do it because America did it or do it because Tanzania or Rwanda has done it. You really need to have a grasp. So I think economists need to be broad-based, live in that broad space and be able to be relevant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fred Mahomza, for that submission. And something important you mentioned is the importance of political economy. And for all those who are part of the call, you should do research on post-Keynesian economics, because that school of thought will give you insights into how the state and the different institutions within an economy actually affect economic activity. Because of time, we shall not delve into the details of that. However, as Open Economics Uganda, we plan to always have events that will eventually focus on some of these alternative schools of economic thought, especially depending on the needs of the students pursuing economics in Uganda. So we have a number of questions that have come in from our participants. And I would like to begin with some of the questions that came in earlier. I believe that from the submissions from Dr. Fred Mahomza and Mr. Wilson Asimwe, some of them have already been answered. I will just read them out to recognize your input in sending the questions. However, I will only give a chance to the panelists to respond to those questions that have not already been discussed. So Mariam asks, what are the main roles of economists at different workplaces, and what are employers' expectations? I think we have answered that. Barbara Duhabwe says, I am pursuing a master's in economic policy and planning. What jobs besides those in the public service can I apply for in the job market? I think these will, I'll leave this to Wilson to give suggestions, and you can also use the chat platform to respond to some of the questions. And Atukunda Daisy asks, who is an economist? I think Wilson did justice to this question through the different historical perspectives of economists and how the school of economic thought has evolved over the years. Nicholas asks, comment on the post-COVID era on our economy. This has also been hinted on, the importance of pluralism and empowering economists to look at economics from different perspectives and interacting with the different schools, for instance, the schools of sociology and health. And I'll give this question to Wilson. It's from a gentleman called John Paul Sentongo. We haven't discussed this, however, I think it is important. What are the impacts of online payments, say cryptocurrency, to the economy? Mr. Wilson Asimwe, if you could respond to this in 2 or 3 minutes so that we can have as many questions as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, James, and thank you, participants, for the questions. Largely, the two questions. One, what job can an economist do apart from public service, and also the impact of online payments to the economy. As discussed and presented by Dr. Fred Mahomza, that economists are required everywhere, not only in government. Wherever you have scarce resources which need to be used optimally, you need an economist. Yeah, for instance, what Makerere say farm. Let's say a sugarcane factory, or a farm is manufacturing sweets and they're supplying it to different markets. The question is, how do you set the price for different markets? And in an effective way, in an efficient way. So you need an economist to optimize such. There's a distance, because every market involves distance, and every distance involves costs to take those products there. And based on the transaction costs and other costs, an economist can be able to assess and determine which price to set for different markets, and also how to reduce wastage. Like the question Dr. Fred Mahomza asked about the rocket. Yes, we need an economist there because resources are being used to make the rocket. But when you have an economist on board, you can minimize the cost you're spending or the cost of input, but to make sure you get what you want at a cheaper cost. So an economist can work everywhere. Coming back to your question, in NGOs, you can work in NGOs, you can work in banks, you can work any entity that involves costs and revenue, you can work there. Then secondly, the second question, the impact of online payments. You look at this in terms of the flow of income. If I pay for something online, what happens? And when I go to the bank, let's say option A, I walk to the bank, and when I go to the bank, I withdraw the money, then I go and pay. Now there's something called opportunity cost comes in. At the time I've walked to the bank to get the money and then to go to pay, I would have used that time to earn some income somewhere, wherever I was working. I think you have heard about the Bob Moto bidding model, which largely explicitly explains about that. But when I do it online, I use my phone, get the money from the bank, my mobile money, and then pay. So I would have saved the time. So you can see that transaction costs come down. There's efficiency in doing things when you have, let's say, digital payments. So which means you can, even with that efficiency, the drudgery reduces, which means even transactions are going to increase a bit, which means even it has implications on the velocity for money. So it has implications on the economy. And anything that touches the velocity for money touches monetary policy. And also, it also touches fiscal in terms of tax collections and in terms of government decisions, and also in terms of regulations of these institutions to make sure that the online payments are done efficiently. So the impact is broad-based. All institutions are affected, but in the end point, it improves efficiency. But this efficiency can be measured once you collect data from different, for some time, or cross-section data, you can be able to assess and see the impact. You can quantify this impact. Yeah, I hope I've addressed the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's one question that I'm going to get from Nalima Marvin. The question is, where can I start from as an agricultural economist? I'll leave this to Dr. Fred. If you could if you have a brief response to Marvin.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I've sent her a personal written message in the chat, but for the benefit of all the others here, this is not just a question of narrowing your scope of where you want to go, because agricultural economists, to begin with, they do a lot of basic foundational economic concepts and theories, which are sometimes significant enough to enable you look at life objectively. Yesterday I was just chatting here with a student who came to seek my advice and counsel. This is a BBA student and I said, what do you want to do? I was glad to hear she said, I want to go and start a business. I want to go and start a restaurant for fast foods. So you're not even just starting a restaurant for traditional foods, but you really want to start a restaurant for fast food. So the conversation narrowed down to that. Where do you want to put it? Because of course, you begin to answer the question of you now know what you want to do, but then for whom? Fast food is not for my age bracket, 50 years plus. Certainly you are looking for those young people below 25 who like chips and chicken. Where are you going to find them? You can only be in Wandegea because they're in Makerere, but you can also find them in Chambogo, you can find them in Nakawa, you can find them in Kansanga. I hope some people remember these places, especially those in the diaspora. So the conversation goes in there that economics is already beginning to tell you to say, can you assess your market? And then if you're going to do it, don't look for a place that is too big. Fast foods, are you going to allow people to come in and sit because that means rent has got to be of a bigger space? No, I just want like a small place because it will only be takeaway. So economics is already beginning to inform your decisions to say, I don't want to rent a 20 by 20 meter space because that will be costing me a lot of money. Most of the people I need possibly don't want to come even and sit, but I'll brand myself as a takeaway. There are those drive-throughs in Europe. You don't even leave your car. You just make an order there, continue driving, and you find your food is ready, take it and go away. People are trying to do those models of how do I produce for what market, for what product that they need. But you're trying to be mindful of cost reduction, efficiency, effectiveness, and business success. It's about a profit. If you can keep that sales revenue above the cost, then you're making progress and your business will grow. So as an agricultural economist, you can work anywhere, in an NGO, in a government agency, with a UN agency. You can start your own personal business. But when you go there, what's going to be your core? To help the decisions that make sure you optimize and maximize the objective function of that organization, which could be your own organization, and making sure the costs are kept low. These are the benefits we're having now. This conference would have cost us a hotel venue. Some people would have had to pay for air tickets. But here we are, everybody picking what they are supposed to pick at the cost of data, which is possible 1,000 shillings. I don't know how much data for an hour costs. But this is the economics, really. The economics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fred. And to further emphasize on your point, we are able to actually host people from all over the world at the moment. We have people joining in from Germany and other parts of Europe, and also South Africa, Zimbabwe. So this is, you could say, the benefit that has resulted from coronavirus and the shift into digitalization of most of the meetings and platforms like this. So that's an advantage. Maybe briefly, and I would request the panelists if you could hang on for a few more minutes. I know we're supposed to end at midday. However, we have so many questions that are coming in. I'll allow for 2 or 3 more questions, and then we shall close. However, our lines are always open in terms of email address and also our platforms on social media. I've seen Dr. Fred has shared his email address. So if you'd like to engage more on how best you can benefit as an economic student, please reach out to us. So Mr. Wilson, if you could briefly respond to this question. Someone asks, how is the Ministry of Finance incorporating programs to benefit young economists as they move from academia into the policy space? If you could respond briefly on that.
Thank you, James, and thank you for the question. How is the Ministry of Finance supporting the process of passing on skills, hands-on skills to students for White University? At the Ministry of Finance, we have first is we have an extensive internship program where every department is required to have interns. So we put a number of interns in the ministry and every department, and they learn according to their fields. We have accountants, we have economists, we have administrators and other fields, and with that we make sure we engage them. At least interns who have come to my department, we have tried to make sure that they come back with some more modeling skills, be able to analyze, get exposed to softwares used by economists, and they're able to do some analysis. And it's a requirement in our department before you go out, you do some analysis, policy analysis, and present. And that's very good to pass on the skills. Yeah, that's largely which the ministry is doing. And secondly, the ministry publishes most of all the reports which are done, policy reports, let's say performance of the economy reports, annual reports, which are published on the ministry's website, and budget papers, there's background to the budget speech. All this information is available to students who are willing to learn more what economists do. Yeah. And also students who come with data needs, and also need to learn some skills maybe in their research. We have helped some students who have come requesting for data, guiding them on which kind of tools they can use for the analysis, even if sometimes give them support. Like recently, we got a student from Makerere University, a master student who was trying to use multiplier modeling, and try to guide him on how to do it. So the ministry is doing something great to support especially the young ones who are at the university and aspiring to be practitioners in the economic field. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your response. So we have someone actually joining in from Beijing, China. I thought I would mention that. Thank you for joining, and I hope the discussion is insightful. I think your name is Priska. Thank you very much. So I'll go ahead and read one more question and probably a few comments, and this would go to Dr. Fred. It comes from Brian Ogenroth, who asks, what is the basis? Who asks, what are some of the best practices along the lines of political economy that support human capital development, specifically teaching and learning of economics at higher institutions of learning? This is a very broad question. However, if you could give a brief response. Thank you, Dr. Fred. Dr. Fred, if you could unmute.
Yeah, thank you. And to the chat, I think I've sent a chat to everybody on this particular question, but let me just highlight one or two things to say. Human capital development is a means to the end. And in a political economy space, as I said, people are arguing. There are resources there. There are those who have power. A president can wake up and say, I've given this particular individual 5 billion shillings. And yet there is a whole university looking for those 5 billion shillings to set up a lab, and it can't get it. But those are the power to make decisions. Now you have got to go there and make a case to interest those in power to invest in human capital development. Now, most times we just plainly say it. Education needs money, we are underfunded, but you're not actually getting to the point of saying, what is the purpose of educating citizens? Because that's what needs to be brought out by the human capital developers. I asked the question about the satellite. Monitor has been kind enough to tell us, well, Egypt launched a satellite and one satellite cost them $40 million. So it is very easy to go there and pay the people who launch satellites $40 million and they'll put one in space for you. But what human capital capacity have you built to tap the information that's going to be coming out of that satellite? And to repair the satellite, to engage the satellite. So are we investing in space engineering? if you want to go to that route. So it is important for the people who are advocating and urging for increased investments in human capital development to say this is what it means. When we train more doctors, when we train more scientists, when we train more agronomists, when we train more modelers of road transport systems, more planners, more all sorts of caliber of people, this is what will happen for the economy. We are all happy that Corona came when scientists across the globe had already found some basics about dealing with these diseases. There was SARS in 2003, there was MERS, which are all coronaviruses in 2012. So scientists had already engaged it. By the time COVID came, we already knew that you can use soap, you can use sanitizer, basic things that are with people. So you want to link your human capital development to national development and welfare. To say having our own scientists is important because not everybody is going to be engaging our basic diseases. We still have Ebola here, we still have West Nile virus, we still have jiggers, we still have smallpox, but these may not be global diseases. These are things we must deal with ourselves, and we require sufficient training of our own human capital development. So I think in a political economy space, you're arguing with so many people and you need solid, grounded reasons why you should convince those in power to do that decision and give the investment. I think that's partly what we haven't done. And even when we have done it, we have not done it well. We have borrowed huge monies, invested in what people are calling skilling Ugandans, vocational training. This country is littered with so many empty vocational schools. But we also know the data. So the use of statistics and modeling, we all know that most of Ugandans do not finish primary school. The average schooling age in Uganda is 6.9 years. Literally meaning average Ugandan is not finishing primary. So what are you doing building a vocational school where entry requirement is senior 6? You have already left most of the Ugandans and they will never pick those skills. And yet these are the people engaged in economic production activities. So we need to change our skilling. We need to change the way we present the facts in order to make the right decisions. This is basic economics, but integrated into socio-economic development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll read a comment that is from Senyonga John, and I think it is helpful, especially to those who are thinking about career and could be also looking for jobs and employment. He says, my name is John Senyonga from Haifa International. Increasing development organizations are talking of investment in development work, and there is growing interest from donors to finance projects based on clear economic analytics. So this creates more space for economists in the NGO development space. And this comment further emphasizes the point that Wilson also shared earlier, the importance of an economist knowing how to do economic modeling, basic data analysis. Some of these skills might not be taught in class, however, they are required in the field. So I'm going to give the panelists a brief moment to conclude and give their final remarks. And I apologize again for going over the time limits that we had set. However, I believe that it has been very worth it. So I will start with you, Mr. Wilson Asimwe, if you could give your concluding remarks. And also someone asked the question of if you could please repeat and restate the software that you mentioned, the software model that you mentioned in your presentation. I think it's for data analysis or something. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, James. And participants, thank you for the questions. Now, beginning with the softwares, the number of softwares can be used in economics, and more are still coming. But the software you use depends on the data you're going to use and also the kind of analysis you're going to do. Yeah, for instance, if you are focusing on micro simulation analysis, Stata is very good. We use Stata software, and the macroeconometric analysis, largely the majority of the modelers use eViews, and also R can work, and a number of other softwares. But also there are models like CGE modeling. There you use, let's say, GAMS or use GamePack. GamePack is the Australian version, and the GAMS an American version. But there are other models like, say, like DSGE modeling. There you use MATLAB, which is good. you can do it. And also, and a number of other softwares can switch and do different kind of analyses. So with those, I think most of those softwares have demonstration licenses, which are free. And with these, you can run simple models. You can learn easily. You can get someone's code, which many codes are online now free. You can download the code. Let's say if you want to run the CGE, you can go to PEP website and download the code and run it, and be able to learn how they built it, follow the manuals to understand. And once you can run it very well, then you can replace it with the Ugandan data and be able to begin the analysis. And when you get challenges, there are a number of modelers in Uganda, at the university, there are a number of them, even the field, you can get support from any of them. Then the other one is like the conclusion remarks. Conclusion remarks, I would say that it's important for students never to give up. Never to give up. You have to know once you begin doing analysis, you have a number of bugs. And all modeling is all about solving bugs. You have to be debugging your tools. Errors, because you are dealing with the economy-wide databases, and you are using, trying to transform theory into equations to work, to write on the data, and be able to get results which have some economic meaning. So you cannot avoid having errors. So don't fear making your hands dirty. Keep on running and working and moving forward. And with time, you never know, you can also build on the School of Economics and add some new terminologies and also add some new findings. For instance, in Uganda recently, we learned some new terminologies which are based on the Bible. You remember when the president was reading a State of Nation address, began with the scripture and then led it to the economy. And from that, we picked new terminologies. We got the dichotomy of the economy into two. That is the real economy and also the leisure and pleasure economy. And pleasure economy is an economy which works when the weather is okay. But when the weather is not okay, when it's about survival, we now have to search for the real economy. And this largely covered food, shelter, and security, health, infrastructure, medicine, and spirituality. And with those, we discovered that the economy is secure. And that those guided, as an economist, we had to move very fast and try to put that information into our models and be able to come up with policy options. And those policy options are guided. And that's how you consider the economy where it is. It's not, though we are hit by COVID, so we are not as hit as a number of economies outside Uganda. And with this, you could see that some economists also had hinted on this. For instance, when you look at the theory or the Klein-Rubin utility function, it talks about the supernumerary expenditure, the expenditure which you spend without looking at the price. This on food, whether prices go up or go down, you have to buy food. You won't consume a sack of maize because the price has gone down by 90%. And you won't sleep hungry for a month because the price has increased by 200%. So that kind of real part of the economy became more pronounced in this season. And also the urgency. You have to know as an economist, whatever you are doing now, in the field, urgency is now important. Policymakers need information now to make decisions now. When you delay, decisions can be based on subjectivity. So as an economist, when you are coming from university, you have to know that sometimes when there's pressure, you have to provide your findings so fast, get data and work so fast and provide results maybe overnight, depending on the urgency. So with that, if you put that in mind and keep learning, never stop learning. I'll give you a last example. Like last year, I graduated with a second master's in Master of Science in Financial Engineering, purely free. I did this course purely free online at university in the US. Yeah, you have to do a quiz, and once you pass the quiz, you are admitted to get a scholarship. There are a number of free opportunities like that. Learn, and the economy is moving so fast. Now economists elsewhere are now moving to machine learning, and that school of thought is moving so fast. So we need to catch up, run so fast. So develop your IT skills, do a favor to yourself, buy a laptop and be able to do something at home, yeah, and also at university. And with that, the sky is the limit. We are waiting for you in the field. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson Asimwe, for freely sharing your experiences and the resources that you've mentioned. And in addition to that, of course, I think everyone is now familiar with the importance of having digital skills, especially in light of the lockdowns and the restrictions that have been brought by the COVID-19. So it's very important not only to advance your career, but also personally to be able to transition in case there is need to do remote work. You need to have those basic skills of modeling, data analysis, and something that you mentioned, keep learning. Every student, you shouldn't, after graduating, do not think that that is the end of it. And also while at university, make sure you keep reading various resources like The Economist, as mentioned by Dr. Fred Mahomza. There's actually an online version of The Economist. So in case you're not able to access the physical, you can just go on Google and you search The Economist. You'll find many resources on there. With that, Dr. Fred Mahomza, would you like to share your parting shots?
Yeah, we are seeing within a minute. Time is a scarce resource, so we will have to apply economics to it. It's just to encourage colleagues in this meeting to be proud that they're economists, because for me, that's the fundamental of everything else. Whether we do roads, we do them to grow the economy. They are a means to the end. Whether we're building hospitals, there is an economic reason to that. We want a health labor. You may also be employing people. Whether you're fighting military, you want to secure the economy for investment and development. So economics is the foundation. Be proud you're in the right space. Don't undermine your own thinking and raise your head up there and go and face it. As an economist, I've been in meetings with the president, not discussing the economy as such. My last two meetings really were discussing how do we invest in the pharmaceutical industry, research now that COVID is here. And you can hear the whole world, each one is coming up with their virus. The virus is mutating, people are coming out with their own vaccines. So what is the way forward for Uganda? And that was really our conversation. But as I said, there was a lot of economics there. And now the conversation is on the satellite, on security matters, quite a number of things that really require an economy. So brave yourselves, raise up your collars, even if you do not have any, tighten your belts if you have none. Still go ahead and tighten it and walk proud and big, and economics gives you all the opportunities the world has to offer. And please, if you can practice it in Australia, in Germany, in China, in Uganda, in Kabale, in Arua, go ahead, there is space for it. And remember, it's about the profit. Don't forget yourself. You need to earn something and live as a proud economist, as an example to your family and friends and relatives. God bless you all.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much again to our panelists for the wealth of knowledge, experience, and expertise that you have shared within the scope of less than 2 hours. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to our audience for taking the time to honor our invite to this event. We shall update you on when our next event is. Follow us on our social media platforms. And also, if you have any question, please reach out to us via email. And finally, I would like to thank the Open Economics Uganda team that is behind the scenes, that has worked tirelessly to make sure this event happens successfully. And also to our partners, Exploring Economics, Protestant Academy of Thuringia, and the Heinrich Böll Foundation that is based in Germany. We hope to interact more with you, and thank you very much. I wish you the best for those who are still at university and those that are pursuing different careers. I wish you the best. I hope you put to practice the lessons that you've learned today. Thank you very much. Until next time.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, James and Wilson.